So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Mariann Gonzalez Melendez. I'm with Early Learning Indiana, and I'm really glad to have you join us today for our Q&A. If you're new to the exchange, welcome. This is a space that gathers community-based organizations, early learning leaders, and other system stakeholders just like you to discuss, ideate, and address key issues and opportunities for early learning in our state, using both informal, organic conversations and structured exchanges of best practices and innovations, such as what we're doing here today, our Q&A. We can learn from one another and spark ideas about what we can do in our own communities that can make progress in fostering learning for young children. So before we get started, I'd like to make an ask of all of you to continue using the exchange to make those connections and share ideas, comment on someone's post, or start your own, sharing successes, asking a question, and much more. You have a wealth of expertise and experience on the other side of the keyboard. So start a conversation and activate your network. That's why the Early Learning Exchange is here for you. Now, for our Q&A, our goal for the Q&A sessions, I think this is the third one we have, is to give you a behind the curtain look at specific organizations, individuals, or programs that are fostering learning for young children. Our guest will share briefly about their work, and then we'll open the floor out for questions. If you think of questions during the introduction presentation, go ahead and start putting those in the chat so they're ready when we shift into the interactive element. If you were able to join us at our Making Most of the Early Years event earlier this year, you may recall that we invited a handful of organizations to share about their work and the innovative ways they are making the most of the early years. We promise to host Q&A opportunities with these spotlights to give you more time to ask your questions and dive into their work more comprehensively. So today, I'd like to welcome our guest, Mariann Frigo, pediatric occupational therapist and founder of Jacob's Ladder Pediatrics, as she shares insights on two vital early childhood screening programs, Staying on Track and Strong Beginnings. Staying on Track brings pediatric therapists into classrooms to screen infants and toddlers alongside teachers, helping catch developmental delays early and support healthy growth. Strong Beginning extends this mission into pediatric clinics, partnering with physicians who are in child
It's not co-owner. No, HR told me that you would be in the building today.
Make sure that you're muted here while we start our call.
Mute, Miss Erica.
Erica, can you mute your mic?
Sorry, guys.
Okay, so sorry for that. I was trying to find my chat as well so I could do it, and it took me a second. So as I was saying, Mariann is going to be sharing today about Staying on Track and Strong Beginnings, and all the work that is behind this effort. So welcome, Mariann. I'm just going to turn it to you now.
All right, thank you so much. Well, thanks for everybody for joining us today. I'm going to primarily talk today about Staying on Track. That was our original grant. Strong Beginnings was the second phase grants, and we've just gotten that really rolling. So we don't have a lot of data yet of baseline and how far we've come yet, but I'll talk a little bit about it at the end. I'm going to start out just explaining the overview and the setup of what we did for Staying on Track. And then from there, we will spend more time on the benefits, and I'm really looking forward to feedback and brainstorming to help us make it even more helpful for all the kids and for the teachers. So let me see, how can I share my PowerPoint, because I am used to Teams. Let's see, is this gonna work? That's in the middle, but let me move up to the top.
I can confirm that we're seeing your screen.
Okay, good. And now we're at the beginning, which helps. Okay, so our program that was our first round of grants is called Staying on Track. And I will show you a little bit about just who we are for our background. Jacob's Ladder is a pediatric rehab center. We're based in Northwest Indiana. We see about 1,100 infants a week and about 300 kids at our center. They used to be mostly school age, but actually since COVID, there were so many children that didn't always get the early intervention they needed. About 40% of the kids at the center are now under the age of 5. So even that is a big shift. We have about 90 therapists that are pediatric specialists. That's occupational, physical, and speech therapy. And then developmental therapists have usually an elementary ed degree, and some of them are school teachers and they work for First Steps in the afternoons. And we serve about 7 counties. So what made us look at this issue was when CDC announced that 1 in 6 children post-COVID are now being diagnosed with a developmental delay. That's a huge increase. And we know as early interventionists, that's not because we're having more cerebral palsy kids, we're not birthing more Downs kids. Those are neurotypical newborns that are getting off track somewhere before they get to school. And so we really wanted to look at what's the options for preventing these kids to end up with a delay when they were completely neurotypical at birth. And some of those data is there. We all know that 0 to 3 is a critical period for growth. And so that's going to be the highest opportunity to change their trajectory. We saw the need, and so we wanted to look at what kind of prevention could we do. And that's where we came up with the staying on track idea. This was to create some kind of developmental screening and support program. And we wanted to specifically implement this in childcare centers because we know as early interventionists, it's what we do every couple of hours all throughout the day that's going to make the child optimize their growth compared to if we just come once a week, and do one therapy session. What really changes is what we do all through the day. And so using childcare centers was a huge platform for us because we know those are consistent adults in that child's environment 40 to 50 hours a week. We also work with a lot of teachers that were very frustrated and burnt out with all of the behaviors and issues that some of the kids were having. And we understood where those came from and how to help them improve. So it was a natural collaboration for us. And Jacob's Ladder proposed a 3-tier program. It was to look at early detection of gap areas, especially for 0 to 24-month-olds, strengthen parents through encouragement, education, and empowerment, and provide teachers with supports and trainings. Children in the child cares would be screened 3 times a year, so about every 4 months. Our focus was originally when we wrote the grant for 0 to 2-year-olds, because we know by the time they're getting into 2 to 3-year-olds, they've already developed those cornerstones. So depending on how strong those cornerstones of development are, that's how everything else is going to build from there. And we chose the ASQ not because it's perfect for 0 to 2-year-olds, but because it was standardized and we felt like we needed to use a standardized platform. And then we also have home exercise programs that we were going to give the children and that the teachers could do in the classrooms, whether it's individual to that child or it's going to be classroom-wide activity like an obstacle course. Our outcomes included decreasing the average age of referral to First Steps. So that would be in the case of a child really does have a delay and needs to get some extra support. The second one was less overall children exhibiting pre-speech red flags and diminished severity of delays. So those were kind of our markers for the children. For our families, we wanted parents to receive their child screening and results along with some handouts for appropriate play activities at home, notes from the screener about how well the child is doing and any gap areas, and then the therapist's recommendation on if there are gap areas, whether the child needed to just do activities or needed to pursue first steps. The opportunities for parents included home exercise packages, video tutorials that we have on our YouTube channel, and we specifically tag a specific 5-minute video that we want the parents to do at home with the child. And then they are also invited to the monthly milestone training programs that we run for the teachers. And for those anticipated outcomes, it was going to be to strengthen the parents' understanding of milestones, improve their competence and confidence in cooperative play with their child. And the biggest one was to reduce resistance or fear about seeking out services. So from what our teachers would tell us, the biggest stumbling block is the teacher could see something was going awry. They knew the kiddo was struggling, but the parents were just very apprehensive to reach out for support. And then for our teachers, which just so you all know, every adult in the classroom I call a teacher. I feel like they all have the same responsibility to guide and help that child grow. So when I say teachers, I'm talking about all the adults. Teachers will receive support to enhance classroom activities. After the screenings are concluded, therapists set aside time to go over kind of the group goals and provide activities and training to the teachers and answer any questions. We do the screenings in the classroom, so the teachers are very collaborative in answering our questions, saying, no, he usually can do this better, or he really struggles in this area. And our outcomes for the teachers are increased effective classroom strategies, report of improved job satisfaction, and increased self-awareness, effective strategies when looking at the challenges of children and parents. Now we're going to move into how we set all of this up. So staying on track, we launched the early stages. The key components we were looking at is what kind of screening to select. And as I said before, ASQ was not our top choice, but we did want something standardized. But we do see it still is weak in the 0 to 12 month areas. The screener training, which we was provided actually through First Things First, which is another grantee. They hosted a training for ASQ for our area in Northwest Indiana. So the therapists were trained. We spent quite a bit of time reaching out to all the child care centers in our area and developing some software to help with tracking and things like that, so that it would be more seamless to be communicating with the directors, the teachers, and the parents. We launched in April of 2024 with 2 child care centers, and we screened 28 children. The overview of the program was to grow how many children we screened each year and to look at the consecutive screenings. So we're doing 3 screenings a year, so about every 4 months. And we wanted to look at the baseline data versus a year in, say, to see were kids making improvements with the activities that we were giving in the classroom and the activities we were giving for the parents. And at this point, we've actually increased from 780, I think we've seen about 850 kids as of today. Mostly 1 to 3-year-olds, because a lot of child care centers don't have full 0 to 12-month-old classrooms because of the ratio. But we are still looking for 0 to 12-month classrooms. And we have the ages and stages 3, the therapist assessment, and the follow-up communication as homework. So this is an example of the parent letter. And this is just what goes home to say, we're getting ready to come to your child's child care center and we'll be doing the screening. There's a QR code where they can go online to fill out the ASQ3. If they don't fill that out, we do still see the child if they have a release, and the therapist and the teacher collaboratively fill out the ASQ3. This is just an example of the ASQ3. One of the secondary benefits of this Staying on Track program was when we talked to directors and we're onboarding childcare centers, several directors would say, we really want to start doing ASQ at our center, but we just haven't been able to get everybody on board. So this has been a beautiful orientation to the screening program. The teachers are becoming very familiar with it. So we expect it will reduce apprehension to start it for their child care center towards the end of our program, because they'll have been experiencing it for 2 years and they'll know how the ASQ3 works. So this is just an example of some of the questions. So this is an example of one child's report. And you can see the first area is the communication, gross motor, fine motor. The cutoff, which is the standard, has the number, and then it gives you your score. And your score is the white star on that diagram. And you can see where in this child's case, he's kind of borderline on communication. He's ahead of the game for gross and fine motor. He's a little bit borderline in problem solving, and then he's doing fine with personal and social. So for this kiddo, when it's communication and problem solving, we're going to recommend a lot of crossing over right to left. So we want to activate his brain more so that he can be more alert and dive into the different levels that are required for problem solving and communication. So the main way we do that is we want the right and left hemispheres to talk to each other. The bridge between those are the corpus callosum. And one of the best ways to get both sides of the brain activated is to be crossing your midline or crossing your horizontal midline. So for a 2.5-year-old, we might do marching, where we're going to hit our right hand to our left knee and then our left hand to our right knee while we're marching. For an 8-month-old, we might have them on their back and having them taking their right hand to their left bare foot and having them play with their toes. But we would do something to try to activate that brain so that they can improve on those problem-solving skills and communication. So that's kind of what one kiddo's looks like. This is kind of how we got all of the programs started. We had a minimum of 2 specialized therapists. When we did the screenings, we would do those in the classroom because we think that's the most effective, and it absolutely gets teacher buy-in, and we're able to answer a lot of teachers' questions. They have excellent questions, and it's wonderful to see how motivated they are to help the child do better and to help the classroom do better. So we do either group activities, or from the group activities, we'll kind of single out the kiddos that we see are maybe bumping along, and we might do some individual assessment with them. One of the things we find with the ASQ3 is when the parent fills it out, they're going to fill out what they see at home. So number one, there's a difference between home and childcare. So you might see some different function levels or behaviors at childcare, but also they may not see, I don't know, what's an example? Like if it's a higher kiddo and they're saying, okay, they can hold the crayon and make a mark. Well, when a parent reads that question, they're going to say, yes, he can hold the crayon and he can make a mark. But when we look at that kiddo with our early interventionist eyes, we're looking at, is his pelvis tipped, which is going to make his head tip. So then he's marking diagonally instead of horizontally. So why is his pelvis tipped? Does he have a tight hip? Does he have weak core? Are the neck muscles tight? And so his body's adjusting for that. So in an example like that, we would grade him down, because although he can do it, it's not of a quality to build the next foundation on, right? That foundation, we're not going to be able to build the next skill very well. So we're going to grade them down and figure out what is it? Is it the hip? Is it the core? And we're going to give some activities for that kiddo. We also do teacher hands-on training, and then we do our post-screening notes. One of the things that we were very intentional about was when we did the training and we started to set up these screenings, we wanted to make sure we had very good inter-rater reliability, because we knew over the 3 years we would be screening thousands of different kids that would get 3 each year. And because of that, we would have to really grow our team. So for the screening training, we initially had, I think, 6 or 8 people go to this training. And then we had 3 leads, and they did the first 5 childcare centers together as a team. And then when they were confident that their inter-rater reliability was good, we broke those 3 off into senior screeners, and we would attach a junior screener to each one. So now we had 3 separate teams of 2, and that's how we kept developing the group without watering down the training. So here's the follow-up letter to the parent. It says how the kiddo did. It talks about strengths and gap areas. And then usually at the bottom, we would include some handouts that have a link to them and or one of the videos. And parents could respond back to us if they had questions. They didn't always have questions, but sometimes. And we really appreciated the questions, because one of the weak points of this program is we really do not have a relationship with the parents, right? The kid has been dropped off. We show up, so the parents never meet us. And so that makes it a little difficult to get buy-in sometimes. So that's one of the things we still are working on. And here is a childcare follow-up. So this is an example of a childcare they went to and the results of those children. And these go to the director of the childcare, and then from there, she or he can decide to share it with the classroom teacher or put it in the child's file. But we leave that for the director to decide. So who benefits? So here is an example of first screening to the 3rd screening for the Staying on Track program. And you can see, if you look at the green is the above, meaning they're above milestone. The monitor is mean they have some gap areas, 1, or they're in that gray area that we looked at when we looked at that graph. And below is the red, which is we're probably going to refer to first steps or talk to the parents about, let's look at doing these activities regularly, but if we don't see an improvement, then the next time we should refer to first steps so you can get more intensive services. And here is an example of the therapist assessment trends, which are pretty much the same. Some of them, again, are a little lower because we're interpreting the quality of the movement or the quality of the task rather than just checking off, yes, they could do it. So the really cool part about this is we did a presentation a couple weeks ago, and I think at that point we had actually seen about 845 children. So if you look at the movement from the concern monitor and the referral to the green, there's about an 18% movement out of those risk categories, right? Which is so cool, which means it's not us doing the screening. It's the teachers doing the activities. Again, the screening just measures where that kid is on that day, but it's the teachers doing those activities every couple hours, every diaper change, right? So when we take that 18% of the 845, over 150 kids are now typical kids that we're showing delays. That is so amazing. And that is completely due to the teachers. So it's just been a wonderful program to watch as it blossoms, because we really are making a difference. And it's mostly the teachers that are making the difference, but we so appreciate that they're willing to collaborate and be curious and hear about why something is connected to something else that they didn't know about before. So this next slide, it just gives an example of some of the handouts that we send to the parents, and we try to make them fun. So we have, part of the reason is we have fun titles for the parents to get excited about it, again, because we don't get to talk or meet with them. But the other thing is we do pre and post tests with teachers to show that they're gaining skills. So the fun titles help them remember, oh yeah, that's the task I do if this kid is struggling with this. So these are just examples of 18 to 24 month handouts. And here's some more. And once in a while, we'll put an article in there like the one on the right. Okay. And then the next slide, this is an example of one of the YouTube trainings. This is our trifecta. So we call this, the first piece is Wiggle Jiggles. And this is for a kiddo that hates his car seat. He hates car rides. He does not want to lay down for diaper change. So as soon as that head goes down, you see his head pop up, you see his shoulder pop up. That's all a sign that his vestibular system is off a little bit. So we're going to kind of force some movement with wiggle jiggles, which helps all that fluid go through all the semicircular canals so that it's not uncomfortable for him to be on his back, and it's not uncomfortable for him to be in a car moving forward. And wiggle jiggles is something we do with every diaper change. And usually if we're pretty consistent with it and then the parents do it at home, usually within a week or week and a half, the behaviors all go away because we've fixed it. We've fixed the problem. So that's the cool part of when they're really little. You can really fix it pretty fast. Here's an example of what the teachers are doing. They also receive training within the classroom. We think that they're becoming more and more proficient with the screening because they're seeing what we're doing and they're helping us answer questions, but they're also seeing the little pieces that we see that the average person might not notice. So we have had teachers come up to us now that we've been doing it a year saying, hey, remember when you told me about if they're tilting their head a little bit, we need to look at that. Well, this kiddo, I see whenever we do a coloring activity, he's always coloring uphill. And we're like, yeah, baby, you got it. You are right. So it's wonderful to see them applying some of these activities and skills. They receive copies of all of those handouts. They learn techniques within the classroom. And then this year in January, we started the Milestones certification training, which has been very popular. It's the last Thursday of every month in the evening, and people just virtual in, and we rotate occupational, physical, speech therapy. And then the next 3 months, we do occupational speech therapy again. And this year, we've just looked at the most common things teachers have questions on, and we present on that. We have a pre and post test, and it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful to work with the teachers. It really has. I think then the next year, that'll be, once they've obtained 10 credits, that'll be their level 1 milestone certification training. And then we'll do level 2 next year for those that want to continue. The level 2 will be requiring them to participate and return demonstrate. So the goal is in the virtual trainings, they'll be able to give some examples of what we're talking about within their classroom. And then when we're on site, they will actually return demonstrate the activities for the classroom, because our goal is by the end of the grant, we have kind of seeded each childcare with some trainers, and they will become the on-site trainers for the new guys. Okay. Oh, and this is what this talks about. January 20th, we started the milestone training. And it is doing a great job. We have teachers that come every time. We have teachers that come most of the times, and we rotate between those different topic areas. I think the second year we will start focusing a little more on specific age groups so that we can look at the age groups of each of the children and what those milestones should look like specifically. And then we also have Livy at ELI. I just did a 3 series with her on it's basically co-regulation, about why it's so important for the teacher to be well self-modulated for the classroom to be able to modulate. And we teach that in occupational therapy, but as an educator, I think she will do an excellent job providing one of these trainings, these virtual trainings for the teachers. So we're working on coordinating that. So now we're to the part where I would love advice. We'll talk a little bit about challenges and solutions and kind of where our gap areas are. We'll see what I got. Yeah. So the biggest thing we noticed right away was we really are struggling to find those 0 to 1 year old classrooms. I think it is a little bit better now since we're a little further away from COVID, but a lot of child care centers really struggled to open back up. And when they did, they just had to go with their highest amount of ratio for teachers to kids. That was just going to be too expensive, which are those babies. So to open the most spots, they needed to open the spots in the older age rooms because they didn't have enough workers, which all of us are struggling with. So we are still looking for ways to tap into that 0 to 12 month group, which we've looked at a couple different things, and that has skewed our numbers a little bit. Originally, the grant was written for 0 to 2 year olds because we know most of those, again, cornerstones are built between 0 and 24-month olds. But the 6 months into it, we asked our support person at EYI if we could add 2 to 3 year olds because we just weren't going to get enough kids. And EYI approved us increasing it to 0 to 3. The next challenge is parent communication. We talked about that a little bit. We really don't have an opportunity to get to know the parents. They're very busy. They don't have time to come to a lot of evening training events. We did start a backpack letter because we realized most of our emails were going to their spam. So then they were surprised that their child got screened today. And we were like, well, we sent you a letter a week ago. But because it's us sending the letter instead of the child care center, it's going to their spam. And then we also did offer webinars and things like that, but we just didn't see parent participation, which I totally get it. They're just very busy. We do have the QR code system now so that when we do send them the information to fill out, they can just go online and do it quickly, which has helped. And the backpack letters have definitely helped. So now we realize in the childcare world, it's not always email, text, phone. Backpack letters are actually a form of communication. That folder that goes home every day is a big part of how you guys communicate. Teacher training, we started MCT, I'd said, and we are also designing training days in lieu of a full screening day. So a lot of the child care centers are saying, this has been amazing, but we want more. We want more ideas. We want to learn how to solve problems on our own. So one of the things we're doing this year is we're shortening up the screening day, and we're coming out to do a 1 or 2 hour training with the whole child care center. And I want to say a fair amount of centers have already signed up to do that. And they choose the topic of where they feel like they're struggling the most. And then we match them with the right type of therapist to be able to go through those problems and solutions with them. So ongoing challenges, 0 to 1. Part of that is our second grant. So when we realized we just aren't finding them, we decided to apply for a second grant, which is called Strong Beginnings. It's in pediatricians' offices. And for anyone who's had a child, you know that you go 8 times that first year for vaccination visits. So for us, it was a great way to catch those 0 to 12-month-olds because they have to go to that doctor over and over again that first year. So we're just in the beginning of that Strong Beginnings program, but our goal is to really catch up with those little guys so we can see, do we make a big impact at that younger age? The next one, parent communication. We've talked about that a bit. Data tracking for kids. Inter-services, or it's called staff training. This is still somewhat a problem. We are working on it, so I think it's becoming less of a problem. But we do need to think about not only how to close out a child, but we haven't been able to figure out a way to track when we do refer a child to First Steps. We don't ever know if they ended up in First Steps. That would take a whole nother set of releases for the parent to release us to talk to First Steps about it. So we just haven't gotten that far to be able to look at what data, how many actually end up in First Steps, other than what the teachers report, which is fairly accurate. If a therapist starts showing up to see the child, we know they ended up in First Steps. So, and teacher hands-on trainings. Teachers fill out a form with therapist on the iPad, and we have a better system just to track all their hours so we make sure they're getting their credentials and the topic areas that they participated in. Hey, our last area. So the average age, this is one of our markers, is we wanted to show that we were referring at an earlier age than typical. The issue is because we don't have access to a lot of 0 to 12-month-olds, it's throwing our numbers off. So we're referring a little bit earlier than the average First Steps eval, but not significantly. We do love to hear about how we're doing from parents. And we do have several testimonies, and one of them is listed here. So I did some of those screenings in the beginning, and I also work in First Steps and sometimes see kids, but I'm also on the evaluation team. And though we go in to qualify a kid to First Steps. And we went into a home one day, and my evaluation partner was like, I recognize this little girl. I just know I recognize her. And I'm like, I don't recognize her. So we get started in the evaluation. And we were like, how did you hear about First Steps? And the mom said, oh, a group came to my child care center, and they screened and they said we should refer her. And right away, my partner was like, oh, that's where I recognize her. I screened her 3 months ago. So it's wonderful. So those are little tidbits that are like, okay, we're doing things right. Future plans and sustainability, we've already added a bunch of, as we see things that are an issue, we've added wherever I can write extra grants. So I wrote an extra grant. We saw that kids were really struggling with speech, which we knew would be an issue. We know that you're not going to be able to speak well if you can't hear well. If this is what you're hearing from the teacher, you're not going to have really clear speech, right? So your speech is going to be sloppy. So we got a grant to start doing hearing screenings for all the kids once a year. I'm clearly speechless. We did those hearing screenings this summer when we had extra interns. 90% of the kids are failing or partially failing their hearing screens. That's horrendous. The first 2 times we did it, we're like, the equipment's broken. Let's test it on each other. Has it been calibrated? No, that 90% of the kids are failing. The good news is it's mostly because of wax in the ears. So once we get the wax cleared out, they'll be able to hear much better. But in the meantime, we're telling the teachers, hey, you're going to have to modify how you do this. And the teacher will say, yeah, I know, Johnny never listens to me. I'm like, yeah, he can't hear you. He just can't hear you. So we're giving teachers tricks like flipping the lights on and off, using big hand gestures, coming down to their level and really talking face to face so that they can pick up on those cues. We sent parents home with letters saying, okay, go to your pediatrician, have them clean out his ears. Parents are calling us back saying the pediatrician knows liability is too high. They won't clean out their ears. They want us to go to ENT. We're just like, oh, for goodness sakes. Now we got all these hundreds of kids waiting for 6 months for an ENT appointment. So we did get a couple pediatricians to recommend the D-Brox drops, which is over the counter. We put that on the bottom of the parent letter saying, check with your pediatrician, but this is what usually works, in the hopes that most moms are just going to go to CVS and go get the D-Brox drops. So we're excited to see next year if that helps clear up some of their hearing issues. Milestone certification training, we already talked about that. It's once a month. We do have a lot of other partners and other groups that service 0 to 3-year-olds. So we have nurse family partners, we have some first steps coordinators, we have some WIC, some health department that are coming in and just sitting in on those virtual trainings because they're just really good. Strong Beginnings I already spoke about. That's the pediatrician's office group. And then Tummy Toddle Talk is another grant we wrote for child care centers that really want us to come like once a week and just consult. Just come to each room, say what's going on. Let's see the room in the moment of the activity and help the teachers problem solve. How can they make it better? How can they adjust it for this kid with low tone? How can they adjust the lighting for the kid that's overwhelmed? So those are all examples of how we've moved through as we've learned things from our results. Final thoughts, and I can take questions. While the children and teachers' goals are being achieved, we are lagging in the parent goals. We do need to somehow double down on those 0 to 16-month-olds. Teachers are definitely feeling more empowered and more successful in their jobs. So we do say always be curious to collaborate because it can be scary at first. We know that reflex integration is really the most important part of that 0 to 16-month development, and that sound production really does begin at birth. So you have to keep that in mind. Tips and tricks, these are just some things that we and the child care centers have done together as we've seen opportunities. New hires usually get placed in the easiest room, which is the baby room, but actually that's the room that's got the biggest impact. So if the new hires are going to go into the baby room, we just need to make sure we're doing some really strong training with them those first 90 days during their probation period. We're seeing that child cares hold back the non-walker at 12 months until he can walk, but by holding him back, all of his examples are other colleagues that are crawling. So we're just finding, no, put him up into that next walking room because now all of his mentors are walking and he gets tons of examples of how to do it. So that's actually really accelerated their ability to start walking. Teacher survival skills. We see talking to teachers, they just don't get out the messy stuff because it's too overwhelming. They put the blocks away where nobody knows where they are because the kids kept throwing them. So those kind of things, we've just created our own bags and brought what we needed. And then the 0 to 12-month rooms, some of the child care centers, somebody's always sleeping, so they're just keeping it dark and quiet, but actually that doesn't allow enough stimulation for the other kiddos. And it's important for babies to learn to be able to stay asleep even though there's background noise going on. Okay, let's see. Woohoo! All right, we have some time for Q&A.
Yes, we have some time for Q&A over here, so feel free to send those questions in the chat or unmute and ask those directly to Mariann here.
Hi there, Ramona here. I have a question. You had mentioned that during diaper change, you said when they pop up their head, there's something is off. What did you say?
Their vestibular system.
The
So they're
stability.
just not, yeah, they're not comfortable when you lay them all the way back on their back. And what you're
Yeah.
doing is you're taking all their vision away. Right here, you're seeing all this. When I'm on my back, all I see is the ceiling, but I can hear things. But it can also be that their vestibular system is off. So they're just super uncomfortable. So you see them, they pop their shoulder up, their chin tucks up real fast. And we teach the staff the trifecta, which is the wiggle jiggles, joint compressions, and cookie dough, which is deep pressure.
Hmm.
But in the meantime, we just say, as the right shoulder pops up, you pick up their left hip, which forces them to lay back down. And then as their left shoulder pops up, you pick up their right hip because it'll force them to get to where they're okay laying on their back.
Oh, okay. Good. Thank you. There was another question. Oh, another question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
And you say that we have or need to do this like for the ASQ 3 times throughout the school year or throughout the year
Well, yeah, that's what's staying on track. That's what the grant allows for.
for the
Um,
grant.
yeah, because they make that much development changes within that 3 or 4 months. So we were going to try to do it every 6 months just to save some money, but they really changed too fast.
Hmm. Okay. All right.
Great
Thank you.
question. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mariann. How are you and
Hey,
everyone
Erica.
else? I
Good.
want to apologize. I did not realize that I had pushed that mute button, and
Okay.
this is being it's
You're
being
good.
recorded. I'm so sorry. I was listening to your 0 to 1 numbers, and I may have missed that while I was having that conversation. Did you say how many you needed or how many you had actually written for? And the only reason I'm asking that is because I'm interested in how we can help you. Um, uh, Better complete your vision. I love hearing other people's visions and figuring out
Yeah.
support that because clearly when you wrote this grant, you had these ages in mind. And yes, your data is being skewed a bit, but yet you're also helping other children on the other end. How can we help you get the numbers that you were initially looking for? Can we start to talk to parents who are expecting? Should we, how can we support your program? Since you're supporting us in the way that you are, how can we help you?
Yeah, thank you, Erica. That's a great question. I mean, honestly, it's because a lot of childcare centers don't have very many rooms open for that 0 to 12 because it takes a higher ratio of adults to babies. So it's really about helping childcare centers find the finances to open more baby rooms because there's a huge backlog of babies, the moms that can't go back to work. Um, So I think that's a big part of it. We've also started looking at, do we start offering going to big churches and screening those kids on Sunday when they're in the baby room? It would look a little different. And I think we won't see the results because, again, child care centers are perfect because they have the same adult with them for 40 or 50 hours a week. That's the key that we're seeing, right? It's not that we're just measuring and giving you the data. It's that the teachers are teaching and making the difference. They're helping those kids catch up to where they're not delayed anymore. So we're trying to look at a couple different things.
Hi, Mariann. Good to see you.
Yeah, hi.
I had a question about how do you think that a community could take this idea and take the first step towards replicating it? We hear a lot from communities and regional groups that are interested in starting off, but don't really know where that starting point is.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. Um, I would say we could have a brainstorming meeting to come up with some of the steps to do. There's things that are really important, like especially for 0 to 24 months, you really need a seasoned physical therapist that's an early interventionist or a seasoned occupational therapist that has a lot of reflex training, because those are the two that either have doctorate level at this point, they've had cadaver lab, they've had sensory, they've had neuro. So they really understand how all the pieces go together. And when the baby comes out and comes into gravity, they've been anti-gravity growing for 9 months. Now all of a sudden they're in gravity and gravity's pushing down on them. It's those first 12 months where they figure out how to move in gravity. So having a PT or OT is pretty important for that first piece. We do have speech also that do a lot. But again, just think about building those cornerstones happen that first 12 or 16 months, right? And then I think inter-rater reliability is really important, meaning you have everybody seeing them and scoring them the same so that we know how to build on that. And then obviously we have to have really great collaborators and teachers that are buying into the plan, which that's hard. We all work a lot. We all have extra work because there's not enough workers. So we are very grateful for the collaboration we have with the child care centers and the teachers. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick plug for the
Yeah.
early learning exchange. I think that would be a great place for anybody interested to potentially connect with you to hear more about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, our big plan, of course, would be that every child care center is a developmental center in the state of Indiana, which would mean teaching and training. The goal with this grant, when I wrote the grant and they said, what is your plan to continue on after the grant's done? Our goal was to get so efficient and good that the child care center could choose to offer this as just part of their services. So they go outside every day, they have lunch every day, and oh yes, they also get a screening every 3 or 4 months so that you know how your child's doing. And that we could do that for about $10 per kid per month. So by the child care center raising their rate by $10, that would cover the whole year program over and over again. The huge advantage to that would be if you're part of the child care, you automatically get screened. We are missing kids that the parents don't sign a release. And some of those kids are at risk and the parents are apprehensive that we're going to tell them something. But the sadness is they wait till they're 5 or 6 and they're in kindergarten and they can't do things. So to me, being able to just increase the rate of that child care monthly fee, which of course $10 is a lot, and it's already really expensive, but now it just becomes a program within childcare. And now it also fixes the emails aren't going to spam, all of this, it becomes just a service of the child care center. So that's what I would really love to see.
I think we would all love to see that.
We have time potentially for one more question. I had a couple in mind, but you were answering them as you're answering Kathleen's question. So we have time for one more question if anyone else wants to jump in the conversation now.
Hello. I had put a question in the chat and it was just asking, did somebody respond already? It looked like somebody responded.
Yes, I believe Emily
Oh,
from
Chandrika. Yeah, I responded.
Okay.
Yep. So this grant goes through the end of 2026.
Mhm.
And then we're looking at continuous ways to continue the programs in the daycares once the grant is over.
Exciting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm gonna make a plug here because it sounds like Chandrika, you're part of the program right now, and I know that we have a few people that are not part of the program like you. So if you want to take like a minute and tell us about what has been your experience at having Jacob's Ladders going into your program, support your children, your educators, and your families.
Okay, I'll give a little quick summary, but I'll just say it has been awesome. We have been seeing growth in our kids, but the teachers really love the fact that the days that you guys are able to go in the classes and give them those hand-on activities so that they know what to do when you guys aren't there. They have been very grateful for that, and different things like the hearing screenings and stuff, and bringing parents aware of those has been helpful. And they've been acting on it too when you guys are telling them the different things that they need. So I think it's really, I think it's really going great. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, that's
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing. I know that was you were not expecting that, but I'm happy that you were here and you were able to tell that part of the story. Mariann, before we wrap up here in the last couple of minutes, if you had anything else that you wanted to share with the group?
No, it's been a wonderful privilege to work with EYI and have the grants and see what cooperative collaboration can achieve. It's very, very cool. I'm just so proud of all the teachers and childcare centers for letting us come in and, find new ways to fix our kids. We would love to see no delays in any of our kids.
Most definitely. So yes, this is one of the great benefits on being on the side of the screen and seeing the early years initiative and work like yours, Mariann, and many other collaborations and initiatives across the state coming up to support the development of our infants and toddlers, our youngest learners. So thank you again, Mariann, for sharing your work with us today. I know we're living with a lot of ideas and inspiration that can inform how we can design partnerships in our own communities and bring those to different settings where our young children are, so we can catch those developmental delays and change the trajectory of learning for them. And thank you all for participating, being engaged with us today. As we mentioned at the start, we will have more Q&A sessions coming soon with different organizations and individuals that are fostering learning for young children. So if you have suggestions for a Q&A topic or a guest, send them our way. The easiest way to find us is on the Early Learning Exchange on that chat feature. Any of the Early Learning Indiana team members here or my colleague Natalie Brake. So we hope to see you at future sessions. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good.